Vinnie, good afternoon, sir. You're in the game in Tuscaloosa.
Good afternoon. It's rainy. It's already dark in New York, and I'm wishing I was in Tuscaloosa, so be grateful you guys are down there.
Hey, now it's 48, 47 degrees right now here in Tuscaloosa. We got football weather throughout the weekend. We're going to the 30s, which I know you in New York have already seen the 30s, but we're going there for the first time in 2018, or the first time in this fall season here.
No doubt, brother. It's the best kind of weather, and it's the best place to be playing football. I wish I was there, but I'll be there for Auburn weekend for sure.
Hey, that's going to be a lot of fun, man. We're amping that up as well. Vinnie, when you're confident, is it best to kind of not say that, or your thoughts, man? I feel like nobody can stop us in the country, offensively, defensively. I feel like nobody can stop us in the country. End quote. When you give that away, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I think that's a bad thing. I think Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Walk quietly and carry a big stick," and that's been kind of the motto of Alabama for the last 10 years under Coach Saban. And a lot of the older guys and a lot of the mature football players have always said the politically correct thing in the media, on TV, in the radio, in all aspects. They've said, you give credit where credit's due. Mississippi State's the number 16 team in the nation for a reason. They're 6-3. They have a great offense. They have a great defense. And they have a good coach. And they're coming in trying to upset this Alabama football team. The last thing you want to do is give them bulletin board material to say, okay, now they're confident. Now they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let's come in there. Let's show them what we can do. And Alabama teams don't need to do that. And that's one thing that the immaturity of this football team showing up a little bit whenever people come out and say stuff like that. Because if you are good, you do have faith in yourself, and you know that you can go in and win a football game. You don't need to say anything, and you don't need to talk trash on the football field. You allow your pads and your abilities on the field to do the talking for you.
Well, and certainly, listen, Irv Smith's a great football player, and I'm sure it was probably a slip, but certainly at times, now I'm going to give you my perspective. Listen to you guys sometimes in the media room, I feel like that Nick Saban controls your voice back in the back, and he's just typing what he wants you guys to say, because I'm like, come on, you're not just identical to Nick Saban. Sometimes I feel like you guys are programmed a little bit.
We do get media counseling. We do get taught what to say and what not to say. They teach us the do's and the don'ts, and they try and coach us up as much as they can, and we have the best people around us trying to help us out and put us in the best situations, because not only are college football teams listening to what he just said, NFL teams are listening. And sometimes you don't want the guy that's going to be saying all the trash talk during the week in the NFL, because that just draws more attention to you and draws more attention to what game plans and certain things can be like, because you say certain things that you might hear behind closed doors with Coach Saban and coaches. And then whenever you say certain things, it could give away game plans. It can give a negative persona on the team, and it can make other people look bad. And I can guarantee you that he's in Coach Saban's office, if not now, sometime soon, and he's telling him, you don't say those kind of things. Coach Saban said, I hope we elect to kick ass. And that's just him saying that he hopes his team goes out there and performs at a high level and is willing to go out there and do what they need to do to be successful. And he calculated exactly what he was going to say and how he was going to say it in every aspect, negatively and positively. And he decided to say that. And he definitely knew exactly what he was going to say. Irv Smith did not go into the thought process that Coach Saban goes into whenever he says certain things on the radio and in the media. And I promise that he is going to hear an earful from Coach Saban within the next 24 hours.
That is a continued thought here. We're talking to Vinnie Sunseri right now, national champ, winning defensive back at the University of Alabama. And Alabama and Mississippi State going to hook up tomorrow. But let's go back and reflect on last year's game for just a couple of minutes. Nick Fitzgerald, I know the linebackers were in an injury bug situation. He had 21, 66, one touchdown, pretty solid on the air as well, 13 of 24, 158. But I think we all remember all those first downs and just kind of nickel and diming Alabama. It was 14-14 going into the break, and then Alabama took 14 late fourth quarter points to get Alabama the lead, 31-24. Any chance that defensive staff reminds this defense of what he did against Alabama last year?
There's too many variables that played into last year's game that aren't even close to what is happening this year. We had the injuries at the linebacker position. Tua Tagovailoa wasn't the quarterback. Dan Mullins was the offensive coordinator and head coach for Mississippi State. And Todd Grantham was the defensive coordinator who has a very similar defense to Alabama and likes to bring pressure and put Jalen Hurts in a lot of situations where if you do pressure Jalen, he goes to his first read and then he looks to run, which plays into a defense like Alabama. So there's so many variables that played into last year that aren't playing into this year that I just don't see him having any success. And if you look at his stats this year, he's not having the type of success that he had last year. He's already thrown 7 interceptions and only has 10 touchdowns. He's not the same player that he was under Dan Mullins. Dan Mullins is the pro of the RPO. He got Tim Tebow to be a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He got Felipe Franks this year to turn that Georgia team from a 4-win team to a possible 9-win team if they're able to beat South Carolina this weekend and go on to win out the rest of the year. It's pretty amazing what Dan Mullins was able to do at Mississippi State, and he's showing that he's able to transform a program over at Florida already. I don't see Nick Fitzgerald or this Mississippi State offense having the amount of success to stay in this football game, and I don't see the defense being able to hold up long enough to keep Tua Tagovailoa without having 3 touchdowns in the air and possibly 1 on the ground.
But, Vinny, do you expect a little bit of a letdown for Alabama, or do you just think they'll confirm the statement that they made last week in Baton Rouge? They'll confirm it inside Bryant-Denny Stadium on tomorrow. Do you expect any letdown or any maybe lack of energy, or you expect this Alabama team is going to roll?
Well, I think that's what everybody's looking to see is what Alabama team shows up. Because if you notice this year, the trend has been Alabama's the greatest, Alabama's the greatest. Okay, they go into a football game and they play down to their competition level. The defense doesn't show up like they should. They give up a lot of yardage, possible points. The offense is a little slow at the beginning, then turns on in the second half. Or you can have the team that showed up last week that played well, the defense was on point, the offense was able to score points and have a lot of success. Tua Tagovailoa looked very well. The defense went in and executed the game plan. No mental errors. Everybody was in their gap assignment, gap sound, run through linebackers. What I'm wanting to see is which Alabama team shows up. And it's late enough in the season to where we can't call this a young Alabama football team anymore, because whenever you go through an SEC schedule, it's almost like an NFL schedule. Week in and week out, you're going to be playing a top 25 team. You're going to be playing NFL-type athletes on the football field. And after LSU, there is no, oh, this is a young football team. No, this is an experienced football team. They've gone into Baton Rouge, and they won big in Baton Rouge. And I'm wanting to see a mature Alabama football team show up and deliver a win and a statement win in a big way going into the Citadel game, and then being able to go to Auburn or go play Auburn, show that they're the dominant team in Alabama, and then go to the SEC championship and show the rest of the country that Alabama is not the team to be reckoned with and control a win against Georgia.
We're talking Alabama Crimson Tide football here with national champ winning defensive back at the University of Alabama, Vinnie Sunseri, as we continue to break down this weekend full of action. Let me ask you about this defense. Help me understand what you see in this Mississippi State defense. We spent a little time talking about the offense, but statistically speaking, maybe that's a little bit skewed because of the schedule, but number one in most defensive categories in the SEC.
I see defensive line, I see defensive line, and I see defensive line. When it comes down to Mississippi State's defense, it comes down to how well the defensive line is going to play. And if they don't show up in a big way, then I think Tua has over 400 yards passing, has all the ability to do what he wants to do, and then add some to it with Jalen Hurts possibly coming in and the running attack and getting going. It all depends on this defensive line. They have 2 NFL prospects. They have the ability to rush the passer. They're big guys. They have the ability to cloud Tua Tagovailoa's line of sight and passing lanes. This defense, from what I've seen, has success or doesn't have success based on whether they can provide pressure up front, stop the run, and allow this offense to have a lot of opportunities to have the ball and have success, because this offense isn't like it was last year, and they need a lot of opportunities to get the ball in their hands and Nick Fitzgerald to have the ball in his hands to have success. But if they don't, and Tua Tagovailoa gets up big and he starts to have success, I see them being the type of defense that won't continue to play. They won't continue to fight, and they'll kind of let off, and it will be one of those games where Alabama starts to run away more and more because the team, Mississippi State, doesn't continue to fight like an Alabama team or an Auburn team might.
Vinny, we salute a lot of the skill position guys. We spend a lot of time talking about those guys, but I want to spend a little time on this offensive line for Alabama. Deontay Brown, left guard, coming in, and this is why you hear scouts criticizing Alabama, because sometimes you get to the league, you might be a little bit injured because you're fighting for playing time here, and if you miss time, there might be somebody behind you that gets that playing time and able to showcase their skills, and that's what happened. Lester Cotton goes down with an injury. Deontay Brown steps in, and really that one guy really changed that offensive line. They seemed like a more powerful football team with 65 in the game.
Brown's one of those nasty old school offensive linemen that I've been wanting to see and wanting to get back on that Alabama offensive line. Pierce Bacher, Joan Williams, they're unbelievable talents. They know how to play the game at a high level. They're very technically sound, but they're not that down and dirty between 5 yards. They're going to be nasty. They're not always going to be the nicest people. They're not going to help you up. They're probably going to push you in the face mask as they get up and probably try and do a couple things that are almost a little dirty in times. And that's what football is. You can't always be the nicest guy on the football field. You have to try and hurt the other person. And that's what it comes down to. We are the modern day gladiators. You pack stadiums with hundreds of thousands of people to watch people try and hurt each other. And that's what football was back in the day. And people are losing that sight because all the rules and regulations nowadays and all the pads. But when it comes down to who wants it more, who's going to try and put the other person on their back, and what Brown came in and did and what he was able to provide for this running attack for Alabama is exactly what we needed, because it alleviated some of the pressure with Tua Tagovailoa.
As a defensive back, are you always looking for a guy like that? Okay, hold on. Whoa, timeout. I got to make sure I know where that guy is, because I may be in on a tackle and this guy comes running in and busting my head.
He's one of those guys that when the running back's still standing up and he's fighting for yards, he's going to come in from the back and push that running back forward or hit one of the defensive players off of him. And if you're standing around a pile, he might throw a little shoulder right as that running back's going down. So, he's definitely one of those guys that you have to have your eye on, because he's always going to have a little extra in him. And he has a little bit of like that I need to prove something factor, because he came in off the bench. And he's going to be doing a little extra, and he's going to try and have success. But I think it's everything that you want.
Alabama football is always at Alabama football when they bloody people's nose, and I'm glad to see 65 bloodying people's nose on that line of scrimmage. Vinny, let's take a quick break here. Let's talk about the first segment sponsor. Talk about Rounders and what they're able to do there. Great atmosphere created this weekend there on the Strip.
Watch the Tide roll at Rounders across from Publix on the Strip with their 11 by 17-foot big screen, over 50 varieties of beers, 30-plus televisions. Rounders is a place on game day. After the game, celebrate with a great game day view of Bryant-Denny Stadium on the rooftop, live music downstairs, or dance in their Vegas-inspired Boom Boom Room. Keep up with the party on Instagram or Twitter at RoundersUA, or add Rounders Bar on Snapchat. And keep up with the party on Snapchat.
There you go. I can imagine that thing's hopping and a popping this weekend. And a great place.
It's going to be wild this weekend. I'm sad I'm not going to be there.
It will be. But you'll be here in a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to take your Vegas-inspired Boom Boom Room back, is what I've been told.
No doubt. It is my place.
There we go. Vinny, coming up in a couple of minutes, we're going to ask you who's going to be on upset alert, who can make this, maybe not an upset, but a little bit closer game. We'll do that in the next segment. Vinnie Sunseri, national champ winning defensive back at the University of Alabama. We'll continue part 2 of the conversation next here on The Game in T-Town on Tide 102.9 and 100.9, the home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports.
You're listening to the best sports talk show, breaking down the Crimson Tide. More of The Game with Ryan Fowler. Coming up next on your home for Alabama sports, Tide 102.9 and 100.9, and the Tide 102.9 app.
Vinny, you've played at the high level, man. You've played at the high level. Buffalo minus 28.5. You think their offense could score 28 points on Alabama?
Josh Allen with Kelvin Benjamin, with LaShawn McCoy. I do see Buffalo beating Alabama, whether it would be by 28 or 20 or 17. It's still a bad loss, and that would still be it's different. It's so hard to compare because you're 18-year-old kids going up against 32, 29, 30-year-old grown men that have been lifting for the last 20 years of their life, and they're at the peak fitness of their life, and all they do is eat, sleep, and drink football. These kids are still going to class. They're still maturing. They're still growing. I do not believe that an Alabama football team could compete with a Buffalo Bills football team. Now, If Nathan Peterman is at the quarterback, I don't think they have as much success at offense, but I don't see an Alabama football team competing with an NFL team. I'm sorry, as much as I'd love to say yes, but
hey, I'm really amazed, and I was kind of sarcastically asking that. I had the television screen up here that's in our studio, and I'm amazed at that hypothetical line has got so much mileage. It was literally just on ESPN, pardon the interruption, just a second ago, and they were asking David Pollack about it. I'm like, I'm going to ask Vinny about this, man. He's played at the high level. And I was really kind of jokingly, but it was kind of funny, and I've been sarcastically saying I don't know about Buffalo's offense. But let's go to real college football on the side here and ask you, what game out there grabs you and maybe a chance to see an upset this weekend?
There's two games that really have grabbed my attention. One is Florida State Notre Dame, just because the quarterback Ian Book isn't starting for Notre Dame. It's one of those games where Notre Dame's coming in as the number 3 team. They haven't been ranked this high in a long time. They haven't had the accolades. They haven't had this type of success. And I'm wanting to see how this Notre Dame team handles a Florida State team, knowing that next week they play Syracuse. And they might be looking past this game. They might be looking past this football team based upon their record. But I'm interested to see how Notre Dame comes in and handles this game. And then the other game I'm thinking there is a chance for an upset is Clemson at Boston College. The number 2 Clemson Tigers going to the number 17 Boston College Eagles. I really think this could be an upset alert. Boston College is never an easy game to play. Florida State, whenever they had Jameis Winston, they had that great team, went up to Boston College and always struggled. I could see Trevor Lawrence going up to a cold weather area, not having the amount of success, and I see a lot of talent with this Boston College offense. Brown at the quarterback position has over 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns. Dillon, the star running back, has almost 900 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. I just see it having the making for Boston College to have success because their ability to run the football, to run down the clock and control the ball and control the time of possession.
Vinny, let's stop in Athens, Georgia for a quick breakdown. Auburn gets a win against Texas A&M, certainly a game that they stayed in it, had a chance there with a little bit of a meltdown at the end by Texas A&M and Kellen Mond and Jimbo Fisher, and so maybe some mistakes there. But either way, they got a win. Now they go to Athens for one of the oldest rivalries in the South. Auburn and Georgia, what do you think?
I think Georgia runs away with this football game. I don't see Auburn's defense having the amount of firepower to stop from Holyfield, Ridley, all these big-time players for Georgia that kind of came into their own last week against Kentucky. Everybody was wondering what Georgia was going to do this year because they haven't really hit their stride and really had the amount of success that they had last year early on. But a good football team, a good coach team always finds its way late in the season to have success. And I see this Georgia football team coming into their home stadium to a team that they lost to last year and having a lot of success. I see Fromm having a big day. I think Holyfield runs for over 100 yards. I think Stidham throws two interceptions. I think Kirby Smart throws a lot of pressure at him, throws out a lot of different coverages that he hasn't seen this year, and I just don't see Auburn having the success in Athens, Georgia.
Ohio State, Michigan State. The reason why we only discuss this game is think about the scenario. Ohio State gets beat by Michigan State, so they kind of drift away. And then somehow Ohio State rebounds in a couple of weeks at 11 o'clock in the morning. They play the Wolverines, and they beat those guys. Then you're sitting here with the Big Ten going, we don't have anybody to represent us in the college football playoffs.
I don't think the Big Ten does have anybody that is competitive enough to represent them in the college football playoffs, even if Ohio State wins out. I don't see them being the team that goes and beats Georgia. I don't see them being a team that goes and beats Notre Dame. I don't see them being a team that goes and beats an Alabama Crimson Tide team. They have no vertical passing game. Everything's running the ball, RPO, and then screens to the wide receivers that are all lateral passing game. To beat a Georgia football team, to beat an Alabama football team, you have to be able to throw the ball downfield and have success throwing the ball downfield. So I don't see this quarterback, Haskins, being able to do that. I think they do get the win against Michigan State, but I don't think they beat Michigan, and I think that's where the conversation comes into play, is if a one-loss Michigan team should be in there above a two-loss Georgia or a possible one-loss Alabama team, depending on who wins the SEC championship.
Vinny, final thing. Let's go back to Alabama. when you're playing Alabama's defense, you got to try to find a way to get some success. If Mississippi State comes in with this offense that is so one-dimensional, we look at the passing attack, it's 106 in college football. They're not very good at throwing the football. They're a pretty good team running the football, but there's no way you can take down Alabama being a one-dimensional team, can you?
Not at all. And you can beat Alabama if you are a one-dimensional team, because the only dimension that has ever beaten an Alabama football team is the passing attack. If you throw for less than 200 yards, you are not going to have success against Alabama, because if you run the ball, it's what plays into a Nick Saban, Bill Belichick defense. They created the 3-4 for a reason. They want outside linebackers to set the edge. They want a nose tackle that can free up linebackers. They want 2-3 techniques or shades to be able to control two gap and control defensive linemen and hold their gaps so that running linebackers have run through opportunities and can go sideline to sideline and make tackles. And you saw that last week against LSU. LSU has success when they run the football, and Burrow doesn't have to be this automatic QB passer that can lead them down the field like a Tua Tagovailoa or a Jake Fromm. Nick Fitzgerald, this game comes down to him in the running game because he's the leading rusher for Mississippi State, but then also in the passing game, because if you want to stop Alabama, you have to keep the ball out of Tua's hands. You have to have success through the air, and you have to put up over 24 points to even be in the conversation of beating an Alabama football team right now, because of the defense clicking right now and holding people under 17, 10 points. And then you have the offense of Alabama that's putting up close to 30, 35 points a game. You have to be clicking on all aspects, offense, defense, and special teams to beat Alabama right now. And I don't see Mississippi State being able to have that amount of success.
We've got awesome condos that are going to be opening here in Tuscaloosa in 2019, early in 2019. It's Camellia Place. Tell us more about this great unit and the opportunity folks can get in right now on the action at Camellia Place as we build some great UA game day condos.
With their gorgeous New York-inspired and styled amenities, great location being steps away from Coleman Coliseum and Bryant-Denny Stadium, developed by the same builder that built the Chimes and Champions Place in the heart of Tuscaloosa. You will find yourself at the spot for Tuscaloosa game day luxury living. And to check out Camellia Place, go to www.cameliaplace.com, and you can look at all the amazing pictures and styles that Kenny Shore, the builder and developer, is doing right now in Tuscaloosa. And if you've seen Champions Place or the Chimes, you know that he is the best and the greatest builder in Tuscaloosa.
And we talk about those units. A lot of those have been sold, but still plenty of availability there. CameliaPlace.com. Camellia Place right there on Hackberry. UA game day condo, certainly, and a lot of folks are choosing because they know the style that he brings to Tuscaloosa. Vinny, as always, I appreciate you for being a part of the show, man. Have a great weekend. Get you something to warm you up inside, and let's get ready to watch some great college football this weekend, man. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Okay, thanks for having me on, guys. Well done.